एकम अक्षरम हृदि निरंतरम भासते स्वयं लिख्यते कथम हृदय कुहर मध्ये केवलम ब्रह्ममात्रं यमहं इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपे हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता जता अवनचलन् आत्मनिष्ठो Namo Ramana. In the first interaction we had on Bhagavan, Ramana Maharshi and time, we could barely see the current scientific thought on time and the convergence of that thought towards Vedanta and Bhagavan's teachings. And we found it going to be quite complex. When we come upon time from outward to in, the journey was quite complex, but we find that there has been in the past from Saint Augustine and in the present the physicist Carlos Rovelli indications that we can talk to our children, we can talk to those who are going through current studies in the school curriculum about Bhagavan's teachings on time. That was the only intent, to take up the convergence of Saint Augustine, Carlos Rovelli, and current thoughts on time towards what Bhagavan so easily conveys to us. So this particular part is the dwelling upon Bhagavan's teachings, the gentle, easy approach to look at the concept of time, its all pervasive nature in creation, and what is it that helps to transcend its clutches. Now, this topic we can easily take up, since we are in Bhagavan's territory, by going to the root of Bhagavan's teachings first. For that, I have tried to select two verses from Ulladu Narpadu so that we exactly understand what is it that is in Bhagavan's teachings that makes us approach this complex problem in a simple and at the same time profound way. So we take up two verses which form the heart of Ulladu Narpadu. The verses 26 and 27. 26 is the last verse in the Viveka Adhyaya, and 27 is the first verse in Vichara Adhyaya. But you can call these two verses as the heart of the Ulladinarku. What is Bhagavan's problem definition approach? In Ulladinarku, we will see that in verses 5, 6, 7, Bhagavan addresses how the world actually is the self. And in verses 8 to 22, he would address and show us that the God whom we have been searching for is actually the self of all. But then in verses 23, 24, 25, 26, he would come to the core of his teachings. What is the root problem of all misery? We find that when a Buddhist teacher approaches a spiritual talk, he will first bring to our notice the turmoils present in the world, the turmoils present in one's own personal situation, personal life. All the wars, the aggression, the possessiveness, the territoriality, and inside us, jealousy, anger, hatred. All these are there. And you go from one culture to another, you see the problems manifested in different ways. But what Ramana does is that he goes to investigating whether the Vigraha, the Indriya, the Prana, the Dhi, and the deep sleep, whether they hold any real problem. That is, the body and the body-related gross world, the Prana and the Prana-related Shakti Lokas, and the Manas, the emotion-related Swarga Naraka, the Buddhi and the Buddhi-related Lokas, the intellect, the subtle Lokas, which form the bridge between all the Lokas. You can slip with the intellect to the downmost, to the one end of the spectrum, and suddenly find yourself at the other end and not know in either case where you are. But what Bhagavan does, he identifies the problem that none of this rise up as I. None of this rise and say, I am this world, I am so and so. There is no subjective consciousness of their own in any of this. Vigrahendriya pranadhitamaha nahamekasa jadam hyasat. So the problem is not really in the gross world or the gross body, not in the subtle worlds or the subtle body, not even in the causal body and the causal world of deep sleep, because the tamas, the tamaha, where the gross world and the subtle world are present in seed form, in vasana form, only to burst forth the moment we awaken, the jiva awakens. The problem is apparently posed as the subtle world of thoughts and the gross world that is before us. But Bhagavan says, none of this rise up and say I. All these are jadam, or inert. Nanendrideham ulaham navilad. The body or the world does not have this I consciousness, does not rise and say I. உறக்கத்து நான் என்றென்றாரும் நவில்வதில்லை. நான் ஒன்று எழுந்த பின் எல்லாம் எழு. The moment the I arises, everything arises. So in verse number 26, he says, அகந்தை உண்டாயின் அனைத்தும் உண்டாகும். அகந்தை இன்றேல் இன்றனைத்தும். The moment the I thought arises, all the problems in all the dimensions arise. And all the apparently, so relative solutions which gives you a laya, they also appear simultaneously. And you are enacted, you are driven from one post to another pillar. But all these neither have the real problem nor have the real solution, says Bhagavan. Ahandai undayim anaitum undayim. Ahandai inrel indru anaitum. Ahandaiye yavuma. This ego itself is the balloon which expands as the subtle worlds, is the same balloon which expands as the gross world. It is the same ego, the I thought which rises. The Satchit does not rise, does not set, has no birth, has no death. But between the Satchit and the body, something to the dimension of the body. If you are Ishvara, then the dimension of the body is the whole cosmos and the I pervades the whole cosmos. If you are a Jiva, then your balloon is small and your I permeates that balloon. But Bhagavan's Upadesham is so substrating that even if you were the Ishvara who is pervading the whole cosmos and you feel that is your body, then Upadeshasaram verses are applicable. That the difference between Isha Jivayor, Vesha Dibida, Satsvabhavato, Vastu Kevalam, Veshahanataha Swatma Darshanam. Whether you are a small I or the eye of Ishvara, taking yourself to be the body of the universe, then if you want to have the darshan of truth, the darshan of Atman, the darshan of yourself, Veshahanatah Swatma. Whatever Vesha you have identified with gross or subtle, you have to drop it. Isha Darshanam Swatma Rupatah. Now we are going to have Isha Darshanam as his very self, which is not as, which does not rise as I and another, but is shining self-luminously as I. One of the popular cinema artists in India was asked, or he asked this self-question, that I will tell you a secret, he says, that how do you know that from inside you, it is you, the ego, talking, or it is God who is talking? He gives a suggestion to his primarily his followers, his fan club. But the suggestion is very interesting. He says, when it is your ego, you can detect that. Decide that which is good for you. Don't bother what happened to others. Decide what is good for you. Don't bother about what happens to others. Whereas if it is God's voice, it will say, don't shirk your good. You have good for yourself. At the same time, you check whether it is the good for all. Whether it is the good for all the people. Bhagavan gives a more practical teaching and learning coming out of Anubhavam. He says that the Jiva, how do you detect that you are in Jiva identification? He says that whenever there is another, then you should understand that you are in the ego mode and the Isha Darshanam is yet to take place. Is yet to take place as Ishvara really is. Then what is the secret of the Mayaham of Ishvara? Bhagavan says, in the Mayaham of Ishvara, there is no Aham and Idam. There is no I and another. There is only I. You call it Akhandananda, you call it unbroken awareness, you call it pure being. That is the Satchitananda. The Akhanda Ananda, the unbroken awareness, the pure being is the Atma Swarupa. One more clue we can have practically. Can you see somebody else's self? Can you see, you may say that I am having so many people in front of me. But can you see their self? Can you know their self? Obviously not. Whatever you see, whatever you know, having used your own non-self upadhis, you can see only their non-self. If you want to see the Atman that is within each and everyone and in the whole creation, there is only one way. There is only way is to drop your upadhis, go beyond time and space, and be identified with the I. That is verse number 26. The verse number 26 is Bhagavan's definition of the root problem. The root problem is not time, is not space, is not creation, is not the gross world, is not the subtle world, is not even the causal world. It is that which raises as I. Ahandai unda in anaithum unda. Then what is the solution he gives? Nanudiya ulla nillai. In verse number 27, Nanudiya ulla nillai, Nam aduvai ulla nillai. This is the very essence of all spiritual teachings, says Kanakamani, one of the great devotees of Bhagavan, who has written a commentary. Being a student of Muruganar, she writes a commentary on Ulladinarpadu, in which she writes with these just two sentences that when the I does not rise, there thou art that. Tattvam asi. When the ego does not rise. So the only sadhana described in the later part of that verse is Nanudikkum sthanamade nadamal nanudiya tannilappai sarvadaval saramal tanaduvam tannilayil nirpadel. So how to fulfill the teachings of scriptures, Vedanta, of Nanudiya Dullanilai, that where the ego does not rise even in the slightest. So none of those earlier problems of Vigrahendriya, Prana, Dhi, Tama and the lokas connected with them, all of them have been rejected, that they don't pose any real problem. And any solution you will get in those things are not real solutions. The root problem is this Nanudippada, the I rising. Nanudiya Dullanilai. To observe that place from where the I rises. Without observing that, how are you going to come to that state where the I is completely demolished? Without demolishing the relative I, which sees the other, how are you going to abide in the real I, which has no other? That is the verse number 27. When the I does not arise, the ego does not arise in the slightest, there tattvam asi, there thou art that. To be that, Nanudikkum Tanamadai Nadaman, without seeking the source from where this root problem arises, how are you going to get to that place where the I is destroyed once and for all? All the miseries have been demolished once and for all. How are you going to reach that? Without seeking the source from where this root problem arises, and without demolishing that relative I, how are you ever going to come and abide as the real I? This is the teaching of Bhagavan. In nutshell, these two verses, the verse number 26, defining the root problem, putting aside all other relative problems which we seem to be going through from morning till evening and being satisfied with the relative solutions. It says, none of them say I. But there is this root culprit who rises from the pure spirit and says, I. And this culprit is fortunately present in each one of us. So, since the root problem is present in each one of us has this independence to come to the ultimate solution within us itself. The ball is firmly in our court. Nobody else. So, this Vivechana, when somebody internalizes that this is all, the end of Vivechana and Vicharana, you bring it here in the Ajna, then the Guru has come within you. Bhagavan says, I am not that body which is outside you. You internalize this. Then let that Guru of Vivechana and Vicharana, let that guide and take your relative consciousness to the absolute. That which alone is Ulla Porul, that which alone is where time doesn't have a bit of existence. That is what you are. Now let us come to the time verse that Bhagavan gives. You can ask any doubts about these particular teaching portions later when the question answer session is there. If you have any doubts about Bhagavan's teachings, about the root problem and uprooting all miseries. But let us now see how easy it is to deal with time. See how difficult it was when we came from the world and the outside to inside. Discuss whether the time is there in the sensory area along with Saint Augustine. Then he says, no, it is all there in the mind, the past, present, future are all there in the mind. He says, I meditated with God and he said, even if whole creation is taken, then time must be there a priori, because you can ask what was before creation and what will be after creation. That itself indicates that time is a priori to the rest of creation. All these difficulties we had, but see what Bhagavan does now, having completely turned around the problem, that the problem is the root I thought that arises within you, and the uprooting of all miseries in all the dimensions of existence is to see that this ego goes back to its source and does not raise its head at all. But then now let's see how simple but profound he has made the concept of teaching of time. Make all who says Krishna. And time meditation is done by Rama. And Rama says time is such a destroyer that it destroys everything. It seems to create everything, it seems to maintain, but ultimately it destroys everything. In fact, those meditation in Yoga system says that it destroys all the three, the great ones, the Shiva, Vishnu and Brahma, all the three stand destroyed in time, he says. Rama, he poses that to Vasishtha. Vasishtha, of course, replies, but that is the extent of the problem of time that Rama meditates on. But then, of course, the teaching is that they all remain in seed form in Pralaya and they re-arise in the Sukshma and Sthula again. That is the samsaric cycle. But keep that in mind. Keep the samsaric cycle in mind. We are going to see that Bhagavan permitting in the later part. But right now, let's take the task of going with Bhagavan's mind, Bhagavan's teachings on time. Verse number 15 of Ulladu Naarpadu is Nigazhvidai Patri Pirappetharvu Nirpa. The three modifications or modulations or divisions of time are past, present and future. So Bhagavan approaches that and he says that Nigazhvidai Patri, depending on the present only, or the moment the present arises as time, then only the past and future arise. Nigazhvidai Patri Irappetharvu Nirpa. Let's for a few moments look at how this really works. If you see some people who have deep depression or those who have permanently ebullient approach or those who have this bipolar. They can go to deep depression and suddenly be hugely ebullient. They will have this ability of looking at the whole of the past and whole of the future. They will say, in a mood of depression, in a mood of negativity, somebody would not have accepted what they said in the present moment. Some gift they gave was looked down upon, let us say. That hurt. They will look back the whole of the past, not only theirs, but all of humanity and all of creation, and say, all this is darkness. The people are all unreliable. But then, having cursed the whole of creation like that, they won't understand that the solution is also within them, that they have this responsibility not only to think vast, but also transcend that, also cross that, not superimpose their emotion merely on the past and the future, but see the importance of the present. In the present moment, if you are in a moment of, let's say, great positive emotion, then your whole life in the past, everything in the past stands validated, and the whole future looks rosy. That is how dependent the past and the future are on the present moment. Nigalvinai patri irappedirvu nirpa. But then Bhagavan gives us another way in which the past and future are dependent on present, or even identified with the present. What does he say? Nigalkal avayam nigalve. When they are happening, or when they came about, or when they are to come about, and they are happening, then what we call as past now is also present. What we will be calling, what we are calling now as future, and what will be coming about, that will also be called then, when it is happening, as present. Nigal kal, as they are happening, they are called present only. Nigal ondre. So there is only nigal, there is only the present. And what is this present according to Bhagavan? There is only one thing present, that is the Atma Swarupa. That name present can be taken as another synonym for the word is, the Ulla Porul, that which is ever present. There is only one that is ever present, that is the Ulla Porul. So let's repeat. Nigalvinai patri irappedirvu nirpa nigalkal avayum nigalve. Nigal ondre. That means holding on to the present only. The past and the future arise. When they transpire, when they happen, they are also called as present only. Therefore, there is only one mode of time called as present. What is that present? That present is the what is, or the Ullapuru. We had seen scientifically that if there is anything else in the present, then that is actually, to see it takes time, and it is in the past. Because the act of seeing requires the light to come into your eyes. Therefore, it takes time. Whatever you see objectively is in the past. We had seen that. We are not going to go into those rough roads again. But you see, it gives a meaning to their struggle also, to the struggle of the scientists to come to this. How easily the Rishi has approached it. But you see, they are struggling, and they are also coming to that there is no now. That there is only the self. There is no movement in time called as now, is the finding of Carlos Rovelli, which we had wound up from many other directions and come to in our previous discussion. But let's come to the highway. That all these three are only present, nigalvu, the self. All these three are only the self. Past, present, future are only the self, the Atma Swarupa. There is nothing like time. They are only the Atma Swarupa. Nigalkalavayam nigalve nigalvondre indrunmai terad. Right now, here and now, without searching for the truth of the self. Indrunmai terad. Irappedirvu tera unal. To seek, to regret something that has happened in the past. We had seen in the previous discussion, if one can wipe out all regrets, then there is happiness in the present. There was a quotation a few days back in one of our friends' groups, which was very interesting, which used this past, present, future, and the suggestion was astounding. Even as a general code, the code was, I have a suggestion for you to think of only one remembrance. You remember only this one thing. So I responded to that friend who had sent me that quote saying that this is an extraordinarily courageous quote. No, because that person who is saying it is saying, I want you to remember only one thing, and that is enough. What is that one thing that the quote wanted us to remember? How fortunate you are. How fortunate you are. This is the only thing you need to remember, he says. Now, where will you will remember in the present? That is the only thing to be taken from the past and have it in the present. Then when you understand how fortunate you are, that is the shadow, positive shadow of happiness you will cast on whatever is to come. Whenever you are sad, the sadhana said, whenever you are sad, you remember that you have forgotten and come back to this remembrance. But then Bhagavan solidifies that in remembrance, there is the mind. I gave the suggestion that Bhagavan solidifies this dhyana of remembering how fortunate you are. And from that, we understand the essence of all dhyanas. And those dhyanas which are with mantra shakti only indicate how fortunate we are. We are repeating how fortunate we are, how fortunate we are. The whole creation is filled with good fortune. In dhyana, in Atmavachara, what? You are the very form of good fortune. You are the very form of grace. But then I am jumping the gun as usual. Let's go back a little bit. That I had suggested back to that friend that only remember how fortunate you are. There, the mind has to go through two activities, obviously, remembrance and forgetfulness. What Bhagavan Ramana asks, is there a remembering self and is there a forgetting self? Two selves. Are there two selves? Obviously, there cannot be two selves we saw. Whenever we say seeing self, the other is the non-self, isn't it? There cannot be two selves. So, is there a remembering self and is there a forgetting self? Are there two selves? Who am I? For whom is remembrance and forgetfulness? So the Atmanishta is the carrying out of the instruction of meditation on the Nama or meditation on how fortunate you are. To remember and meditate, you need a holding self and a self-existing self. Are there two selves? Is the completion of that dhyana that your very form is fullness of grace. The I is the fullness of grace in the present moment. நிகழ்வினை பற்றி இறப்பெதிர்வு நிற்ப நிகழ்கால் அவையும் நிகழ்வே நிகழ் ஒன்று இன்றுண்மை தேராது. Right at this moment, seek the truth of the self. Abide as that. No need to meditate on time. No need to meditate on past, present, future. In the present moment, in the now, if you ask, for who is this? Even with effort, you transcend past, present, future. Even with effort, if you ask, in sadhana, the mind will say, because it is used to this past and future, it would have meditated on the past. This is the error I made last time. Hereafter, I should not make the error. And the progress in the ego, the tapas has improved by that practice. By that practice of working with the past self, becoming an improved self. But then how Bhagavan arrests that movement between past and future? Says that are there two selves, one in the past, one in the future? For whom is this thought that there are two selves? Who am I? There is only one self-attentive self. The moment you possess two selves, then one has to be non-self. One does not exist. Only the self-attentive self is. The self-attentive self alone is. Time is the jadam. Yasat. Time may be the beginning of all creation. Whenever created object can be thought of or known or seen, we can always pose the question, as Augustine has taught, that before this, what was God doing? Or after this, what will God be doing? That means time can be seen to exist before creation, during creation, and after creation. But then that time itself may call who? You identify with that. In Guru Vachaka Kovai, Muruganar writes, any jnani who comes to the Atma Jnana would first identify with time and will understand what Gita Charya is saying, Mai Kalu. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end as Kal. I am the beginning, middle, and end as the Atma. So both. That means Ahamatma Gudakesha Sarvabhuta Shayastita Aham Adischa Madhyamcha Bhutanam Antevacha is there. You can substitute Kal there and say that that Kal is there before creation, during creation, and after creation. But then that Kal does not exist in Atma Jnana. That Kal, Bhagavan says in one of the talks that you first think of time and then divide it into years, months, and somehow intuitively, by God's grace, those chronologists who found this tick, 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 tick time must have felt the natural rhythm in them. The natural rhythm manifesting as natural day, natural cycles of season, natural cycle of year, all beginning with the tick, 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 tick of the throb of the mind. And what does Bhagavan say? The throb of the mind is arising only after the throb of the ego, and the throb of the ego and the throb of creation has to be taken back to the Atma Swarupa, the reality, the ever-present I. Bhagavan doesn't stop with this. He doesn't merely stop with showing that the Kal is fragile in front of Atma-vicharam. It is completely demolished in front of Atma-vicharam. But he comes to the support of all sadhana and karma, bhakti and yoga and says that Kal is shaken in its foundation by these yoga margas. The time which seems to be an arrow moving from past on to future, creating causes and effects, irrevocably going in one direction of karma, do this, do that, you will reach there, you do this, do that, you will reach there, is shaken up once you start the yoga margas. How is it? Let us see the account of one of the devotees of Bhagavan. This is Dr. Anant Narayan Rao. This morning we were reading in our Dr. M. Anant Narayan Rao. This is Bhagavan's Atma-vicharam completely demolishes time, demolishes all the other relative problems, brings you to the self. But see how that Maunam of Bhagavan and that Mauna Sannidhi, how it teaches this doctor about the falsity of causality in time, the falsity of doership we carry, the burden of doership we carry because we seem to be bound by time. And we seem to have done that and come here. We have to do this and reach there. Now that doership is now shaken in its source. There are many accounts in this work called Surpassing Love and Grace, accounts from Ramana's devotees. But this was read right this morning and we get a perception as to how the great rishis have devised the sadhanas for us. Let's say we are not able to do self-enquiry, but we are following surrender. We are following in various ways, through dhyana or through other forms of worship. We are practicing surrender, let us say. And see this great devotee's account. He says he first came across Bhagavan's photograph while traveling in train from one place to another. He was talking with someone, his neighbor, and that person in 1929, he hands over the photograph of Bhagavan and says that this great sage is living in Tiruvannamalai. But that event of handing over the photograph happens towards the alighting from the train, so he is not able to ask further. The photograph safely understood that there is a great sage in Tiruvannamalai, it is kept in the bag. This gentleman is, as a doctor, he is sent to London for further studies. He comes back. He comes back and sincerely employs himself in work. Let's put the times not so rigidly. Gently, I'll keep the chronology in order, but I'm not delivering the exact dates. You can refer to the article if you want. But I am keeping the chronology of the moment that Bhagavan has entered his life there, that as a photograph. He says after 3-4 years, he comes across a necessity to come to Tiruvannamalai for work. In connection with work, he has to come to Tiruvannamalai. And he says, the moment that work-related letter came, the memory of Bhagavan's photo came and Bhagavan's presence in Tiruvannamalai came. It came to him. Then what happens? He not only takes his wife, he also takes another doctor and his spouse, his wife, to Tiruvannamalai. They have darshan. And from that moment, he decides, I have to take after retirement or just before retirement, from where the leave starts, I should come and settle down in Tiruvannamalai. That is the thought he gets in Bhagavan's Sannidhi. And in 1939 or so, he buys a land with Bhagavan's permission and he starts constructing after taking permission from Bhagavan. One direct look Bhagavan gives and says, yes, you can do that. And in 1942 or so, the construction is completed. He comes and settles down by taking some leave before retirement and settles down in ashram, near ashram. The land has some place where fruits can be grown. And he has many kinds of fruits. Within 1 year, the Australian cherries, they give fruit. And he brings them. He brings and gives to Bhagavan, and Bhagavan takes from him and says, very delicious, very nice. Let's take that I am that gentleman. Then that is the fruits of life he is having. The fruit of life, he has come to Tiruvannamalai, he is growing the fruits, whatever fruits of life may be that he has had, he is offering to Bhagavan. And that fruit of, like now I am speaking to you, this is an offering to Bhagavan. This, whatever I am speaking, is the fruit of whatever I have grown in life. Whatever I have grown in my backyard, calling my life, I am now offering it to Bhagavan. And Bhagavan keeps accepting it sometime. I am not able to remember whether it was weeks or days. And then he says, one day he says, he again brings and he says, why are you offering it to me? In front of all the people in the hall, he says, why are you offering it to me? Give it to everyone. These are the words Bhagavan uses. Why are you offering the fruits of your life to me? Give it to everyone. And the doctor says, for a moment there was deep hurt in me. I was deeply hurt that he had stopped me from giving it to him, and he asked me to place it in the public stool. There was a stool where offerings could be kept, a table. On that, he was asked to keep with the instruction that, why do you give it to me personally? You give it to everyone. Everyone in the ashram, everyone. And once he works with that hurt, he realizes that when you feel that the deity to whom you are offering is one person sitting there, then your ego is very strong. Hey, how much I have given to this fellow? All the fruits, 10 fruits, 20 fruits, 30 fruits, I have given to this fellow. Whereas when you understand that one fellow is actually the whole of creation, from the beginning of time to ending of time, whoever is going to live is represented by that one person. And the fruits of life that you have got, whatever I have, they are saying some sadhana or something like that, whatever we have done, it comes into insignificance when we offer whatever we have done to the whole of life. Bhagavan says, I am the whole of life. You can take it as I am the whole ashram, but you can take it as I am the whole of life. I am the flow from beginning to end of time. You offer your fruits of life to me, to the whole of life. ಕೆರೆಯ ನೀರನ್ನು ಕೆರೆಗೆ ಚೆಲ್ಬಿಡು, ಸಮುದ್ರದ ನೀರನ್ನು ಸಮುದ್ರಕ್ಕೆ ಚೆಲ್ಬಿಡು. Don't know what happens. This morning there was another quote. This morning only we read this. This morning there was another quote in our other friends group where this particular thing was being investigated, that don't make a big fuss of what you are doing, but start enjoying the light things, the dawn, the friendly hug with somebody, the motherly love you get. These small things, start appreciating what life has given you, was the quote. And once you start realizing that you are not offering to this one fellow seated in the divan, that your offering of your learning is to the whole of life, you understand something else. Wait for a moment. There is one thing that has to be said from that article before I go to that. That the doctor says for a few days, he used to keep for a few months, I think 2 months or 3 months or a year, I don't remember. For a long period of time, whatever fruits he would bring would be cut and distributed, nothing given to him. That means the whole talk of whatever I have learned, I have done, offered it completely. Nothing, I am totally exhausted at the end of it. That's all. I have given my everything, the heart, soul of all that I know, I am there. I have delivered it, and I know I am not delivering it to a few audience. I am not delivering it to one person seated on the divan. Bhagavan is teaching me, I am delivering it to the whole of creation that has existed from beginning to end of time. So there is absolutely no possibility of feeling anything proud about this. But then suddenly two things hit upon us. That we were thinking we are giving. Whereas when we become zero, we understand from where did we get all these things? From where did we come? We are part and parcel of that flow of life. We are part and parcel. It is the life, it is the all that has given me my relative existence. And whatever I have learned as fruits of life, who has given me? The all. The deity who is sitting there, who is the all, it has given me. In fact, what I am giving, what I said I am giving back, is not at all a separate thing. It is part and parcel of the life, self-giving, self-receiving, self-giving, self-receiving, self-giving, self-receiving, self-giving, self-receiving movement, which is not related to self-giving to somebody else and feeling I have given. Therefore, my whole life merges in the flow of life, and the whole of samsara is understood as not a bondage, but as a self-giving self, self-giving to self, self-receiving from self, self-giving to self. The self-word movement, which is present as the I inside me, is the nishkamyate in karma, is the ananyate in bhakti, is the akanda jnana in jnana. It is the limitless, it is the endless movement you call. You call it endless love or unconditional love or unbroken awareness or the pureness of being. In karma marga, you may call it is nishkamyata. In bhakti marga, you may call it is akanda ananda. In jnana marga, you may call it unbroken awareness. And in vichara, you will call it the pure being. But what it does to the apple cart of time, it completely inverts time. Just for a moment, be with me before I go there. That the doctor, he says he understood that this whole process in Bhagavan's Mauna, by the very act of it's practically being carried out over years by the photo appearing. How does this marga of surrender start in him? Definitely not by his efforts. Definitely not by, he says, somehow the photo came, then for many years he was once again, then suddenly some Tiruvannamalai trip came, What happens to doership? What happens to the straight arrow of time? You find that even in the Bhakti Marga, when you offer that totally, there is one more point we see, that when we offer ourselves and whatever fruits of life we have had totally to the all, as the doctor did, and we are completely exhausted, there is nothing more to give, but we are replenished again. The energy is replenished. Be silent for a moment. Full replenishment of it. From where it comes? The all is giving to all and is receiving from the self is giving, the self is receiving. That is why Bhagavan says, whatever you give to others, you are giving to yourself. So the samsara goes out of existence. And the arrow of time is displaced because the cause and effect is gone. You are no more the doer. Who is the doer? The one flow of life. The one flow of life which is both giving and receiving, which is both love giving and love receiving, is the sole cause for this whole samsara. If you still talk in terms of doing, which is vigrahendriya, that is tama, and they don't exist. the dhi, if you say, then the whole gross world comes into the subtle world of, let us say, love. That loving as a flow, it does not exist because the dhi is tamas. Then you come to that love becoming awareness and the self being the sole reality. All the margas, how do they end up? They come up in the awareness of the self. It culminates, but even the beginning of surrender, with the greatness of the one to whom you surrender, who is all. Bhagavan says, you are not giving to me, you are giving to the whole of life. We find that this displaces the ill effects of time. The cause and effect created in time, the straight arrow of in time, demolished by the simple act of surrender and arriving at non-doership. Bhakti bandidhu nanalla. It is not due to me that I have got bhakti, that I have surrendered. The gentleman says, the doctor says that in the last day he was there and Bhagavan helped him change the bandage on the last day, 14th April 1950, when Ramana is leaving the mortal coils. He had the energy to help him change it. He says it will be terribly painful. But the right hand of Bhagavan was help bandage the left hand, with the doctor being on the side, Anantnarayan Rao. And he is describing something to us. Bhagavan had earlier said to him that when there is personal grief, you are grieving at your own state, then the tears will be coming from the inner canthus, he says. It will be coming from the inside part of the eyes. But when you are in bliss, when you are remembering the oneness of everything, when you are in the hold of that love of God, then the tears that come, they come from the outer canthus. This the Bhagavan would have shared with the doctor, and doctor would have confirmed with this field that this is indeed true. And on the last day of Bhagavan's journey, what will happen is, he says, just nearing 847, suddenly everybody will be starting to chant Arunachala Shiva. That means in the minds of all those devotees, they would have been thinking of different things. Suddenly Arunachala comes in their minds. And the moment they chant Arunachala Shiva, Ramana opens his eyes and looks in the direction of Arunachala Shiva chanting. And the doctor sees that from the outer canthus, indicating that Bhagavan is in bliss, that the jiva, despite the cancer of 1.5 years, the terrible pains, at the moment of dropping the mortal coils, it is in immense bliss, and that bliss comes out through the outer canthus tears. And that is going to be my journey. The Bhakta understands. The Bhakta in the doctor understands, when I surrender to the all, when I surrender to Bhagavan completely, whatever fruits of life I have given, and understands that I have not given anything to anybody in surrender. That bliss, that joy, which is experienced now, is what will be experienced when I am dropping this mortal coils. He says the mortal coil has suffered for the sake of humanity. It has the mortal coil of Bhagwan, which was lying there, has suffered for the uh, work of humanity. But what happens is the suffering on the outer direction actually is experienced as bliss in the inside direction. When we relax after a tough day of, let's say, talks and other things, and you relax into the eye, you can feel the bliss taking away your tiredness. And the doctor says he could actually see how the whole area of karma and bhakti culminates in the jiva, in the relative entity, merging in Arunachala Shiva, in the Atma Swarupa, in the Mayyaha. That merger lies that bliss from which this comes. But if Bhagavan were to be asked that, is this how you would describe that you have suffered for the sake of humanity, and that suffered body is lying there, and you have merged blissfully, he would say, for whom is all this? For whom is this story that I was born in 1879, December month, then I had enlightenment in such and such date, moved from Madurai to Tiruvannamalai in 1896, then lived in Mauna for 7 years, shared with Ganapati Muni what is tapas, wrote all those glorious works of bhakti and jnana, gave mukti to mother, gave mukti to so many ones. For whom is this? For whom is all this? If you ask, are there two selves? One to have been born and one to have died. Are there two selves? One to know who it is and one to be what it is. There is only one self, which is beyond creation, which is beyond time, which is not subject to birth and death, which is not subject to sorrow and bliss, which is ever unchanging as the eye guide. So the whole story gets absorbed along with the time, which was turned inside out by the bhakti, karma and yoga sadhanas. The timeline is turned over. The causation, the doership is turned over. And now understanding that the greatness of the sadhana present before us and the beauty of Atma Vichara, which reveals all these things to you clearly, that the bhakti, yoga and jnana are all directed towards coming and abiding in this self. You clearly understand what is the golden rule of ethic. How was it derived? What is the golden rule of ethic? The golden rule of ethic is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That means if you are the caregiver to an old person suffering dementia, how you should give the care? You should understand you are the person suffering dementia, and that person is sitting in your shoes as the person who is having relatively better shape of consciousness and the relative love. And if that were to be the situation, you are the person suffering dementia and the other person is the caring, how you would have them behave with you? That way you behave now itself to the other person. That means what? You should have the ability, before doing action to another, to put yourself in that shoes, because you are not giving anybody else. Whatever you are doing to yourself. So you find the golden rule of ethic, which is present in all the religions, all the matas, is extracted from the self alone, which is beyond time. The golden rule of ethic. What is this golden rule of bhakti? Ashtamurti Brid Deva Pujanam. Everything you see is me only. Love everything you see as yourself. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Let us say that that is the rule extracted. The neighbor could be human, the neighbor could be anything else. Everything is our neighbor, adjacent thing. And love that as you love thyself. Let's say that is the rule we extract from Ashtamurti Brut Deva Pujanam and loving everyone. Where is that derived from? That is derived from the self alone is, which is beyond time. The self alone is, there is only one self. You are not loving another. It is, there was a video from Chinmayanand Maharaj, which was shared by one of our friends in our group, where Chinmayanandji is explaining that when you are identified with the whole body, the relative spirit is identified with the whole body. Does it say it likes the eyes more than it likes the toes? Does it say it likes the tongue more than the teeth? Or the teeth bites the tongue unknowingly? Does it break the teeth? No. The whole thing is considered as me. And he says that oneness is real good. In our actions, how do we say? Seeing is more employed than hearing. 70% of our action is seeing. We have partial approach to the senses, that we like one sense by whatever nature of things. We like seeing more than hearing. But that is not there when you are identified with all the body. So the relative good is there, but the real good is oneness. Similarly, finding oneness in the creation, the one spirit, the spirit that permeates the whole creation as I is found, we understand that is the real goodness that can exist. That is not the relative good, that is the real good that is shining as I. So you find that dharma, ethics, bhakti has its derivation, has its roots from what? From the self alone is. Since the self alone is, you cannot treat another person as whatever you want you can do to him and be better off. You remember what that cinema actor had shared with his fans. He said that God will say that seek your good, but also seek simultaneously that everybody stands to benefit. Whereas your ego will tell, somehow you see you win at whatever cost. This is how you can differentiate between the two. What does Bhagavan say? Once you come to the I, once you come, for whom is this? Then that is the essence of all the margas. For whom is karma? For whom is vibhakti? For whom is ajnana? For whom is viyoga? Who am I? Bhagavan says, there, the one for whom all this existed, that person himself is destroyed. That person itself, who is the root cause of all problems, which manifest as creation and time underlying creation. The root cause is the ego, that ego being destroyed, the Atman being realized. This is real karma, bhakti, yoga and jnana. Vinay, vibhakti, viyogam, ajnanam, ivai yarken draayindidagale. To seek for whom is Vinay, for whom is Vibhakti, for whom is Viyoga, for whom is Ajnana, that is Bhakti, that is Karma, that is Yoga and Jnana, he carrying out. And in such simple manner, he dismantles the complex problem of time, which we had really put ourselves through. In the last set of discussion that we had, we really went with the scientists. We tried to find out what these people are saying from outside in, how time is dismantled by them, deconstructed by them. It's a complex journey. But once you define the root problem as the ego and attend to it, time doesn't stand a chance. Time withers away, has no existence to trouble you. Along with it, all the creation which is built on time, which can still be talked of as what was there before creation, what was there after creation, that time which underlies creation and creation itself stands demolished when the ego, the root cause, is uprooted and the Atma Swarupa is identified with. This is Bhagavan's easy way of dismantling time, dealing with time. That is why he is able to say, what is time? It is only a thought in you. Ask for whom is time, for whom is place. Without the self-attentive self, can the non-self of time or can the non-self of space ever arise? No. There is no outward turned self and self-attentive self. There is only the self-attentive self. Be that. You are that. Tat Tvam Asi is carried out practically in Atma Vicharam, which demolishes time, which uproots the ego and makes you identify with the self of all. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.